He's the T-Rex of political talk. Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network.
Well, he has survived a lengthy battle with cancer. He just got a new bladder using his intestines. He's a tough guy. He's in the hospital bed right now. Ted Gunderson. He entered the Federal Bureau of Investigation in December '51. He served in Mobile, Knoxville, New York City, Albuquerque offices. He held posts as Assistant Special Agent in charge in New Haven and Philadelphia. As the Chief Inspector and Special Agent in charge of the Memphis and Dallas Division in '77, Gunderson took his last position as Senior Special Agent in charge of the Los Angeles Division. And when he retired, he was chosen as Law Enforcement Officer of the Year in America by AFL-CIO Metal Trade Council. And it just goes on and on from there. And Ted Gunderson literally exposed big cases that even came out in the newspaper with the CIA, with giant child kidnapping rings, Satanist control grids. And he'd talk about this 25 years ago. Even though he had the evidence, people laughed. Now it just comes out and comes out. Skull and Bones, Bohemian Grove, all these pedophile politicians, pedophile priests. This is the DynCorp running the CPS in many counties in the country. I mean, it is nightmarish. So he joins us from his hospital bed, and we appreciate Ted Gunderson joining us to talk about the Tea Parties, false flag terror, OKC Terror 2. He, inside the FBI, saw COINTELPRO. He's an expert who can explain what it is, and in his view, I talked to him earlier, that it's being used against patriots today. Ted Gunderson, good to have you with us.
Well, Alex, it's always a pleasure to be on your show, and thank you very much for giving me a call. And you know me, I'm glad to share any information I have with anybody that wants to listen to it long enough. So,
Ted, that's awesome. Your phone was coming in great earlier. It's overdriving a bit. Can you back off of it a bit?
Yeah, is this better now?
That is awesome, sir. Thanks a million. Okay, tell us a little bit about the FBI, the positions you held, and COINTELPRO. And I know laying there in your hospital bed, you've probably seen Clinton saying, gee, I hope the rhetoric, settles down, because if people don't stop criticizing Obama, it's going to be their fault when a federal building blows up. And we know they've now caught the Democrat operatives with Nazi signs in the Tea Parties. Do you agree they're building up towards stage terror?
Absolutely. I've said this for 30-some-odd years. Absolutely no question about it. This whole terrorist movement was designed to bring on the Patriot Act, Homeland Security, and to take away many of our constitutional rights and civil liberties legally, as they say, by passing these laws. And as you know, Alex, the Patriot Act was passed at 3. It was substituted. The real act had been approved by 36 members of the Judiciary Committee. And it was to be voted on that particular morning by Congress. And at 3 o'clock in the morning of that morning that it was to be voted on, George W. Bush came in with his own version, a 300-page version of the Patriot Act, and substituted it for the other one. And then our congressman voted on an act that nobody had ever read. And, what does it do? Look what it does. It's a direct violation of the Constitution in a number of areas, the freedom of speech, the due process, and then it just goes on and on and on. That's what it's all about. This terrorist movement in this country today is government coordinated, the covert. I call it the criminal government enterprise is behind this whole thing. The shadow government, the Nazis, as you say, there's no question about it. The spiritual war that dovetails into satanic activity and the pedophilia, and bringing the congressmen and senators in the Nebraska case, which I worked with former Senator John DeCamp, and on and on and on. Oklahoma City was inside job, 911's inside job. The World Trade Center car bombing, February 26, 1993. The FBI was not only involved in it, they knew in advance. This is in the New York Times, October 28, 1993, by the way. They knew in advance, the FBI did, about the bombing. And they had an informant in with the group, and he was told to put the bomb together. He went to his FBI superiors, and he said, we're going to use a dummy bomb, aren't we? And his FBI superior said, no, we're going to use a real bomb. So the FBI not only knew in advance that they were going to bomb the World Trade Center car bomb in 1993, they furnished ingredients for the bomb. Now, what more evidence do you want then? That came out during the trial. because the informant, the FBI informant, wore a body mark when he met with the terrorist. And unknown to the FBI, he wore a body mark when he met with the FBI, and that's what probably kept him.
Yeah, that was Ahmad Salam. I mean, he knew that they were setting him up, and so he went in and said, look, you're saying go ahead with the bombing. You did this. Why are you doing this? We were supposed to bust him. And the FBI said, no, it goes forward. Now, again, we're very honored to have you, Ted, and you're going 100 miles an hour, which is great because you're so full of information. Everything he's saying is backed up and documented from my own research. But let's go back now, and be sure and back off that phone for me. Let's go back to your awakening in the FBI, what you saw with COINTELPRO, what it is, and how you see them trying to now frame the Tea Parties, how they're prepping the public and the media for terror attacks to discredit people that are trying to stop the New World Order.
Well, I was very active in the COINTELPRO program, particularly the Black Panthers back in the 1960s during the Vietnam War. We used it against them, and it was very effective, and it's very effective today, and they're using it today. But what they're doing today makes the old COINTELPRO program by the FBI back in the 60s look like a Sunday school class. These guys today are unbelievable. I mean, they're brazen. They're violating the law. They're coming out and trying to set people up. I'm a perfect example of it. They tried to set me up in 1982 with a drug deal with a girl named Pam Fawcett, and she came over to my side and told me that they were trying to set me up, and I gave her a polygraph examination, and she passed it. And then I took a signed statement. I sent it back to Washington, and that was it was short of that unbelievable activity on their part, just trying to set me up on a drug operation. And all they want to do is just discredit me, derist me.
Well, tell people what COINTELPRO is, and when you were involved in it. As you said, that was light compared to what's going on now. What it is?
Well, what COINTELPRO program is, it's a major disinformation program. And I'll give you an example. In the Black Panthers, back in the 60s, we sent an anonymous letter to the Secretary-Treasurer of the Black Panther Party there in New Haven, Connecticut, and told him that the chairman of the Black Panthers Party was having an affair with his wife. We sent a letter at the same time to the chairman, told him that the Secretary-Treasurer was stealing money from the Panthers, and it causes disruption within the ranks, and it causes dissension among the troops. So that's just an example of it. And
that's the kind of stuff I go through. And I know you've gone through it. Just constant lies, constant stories, just throwing as much garbage as they can at anybody that's actually getting something done.
That's right. And they've done that to me. I mean, if you go on the Internet, you see people like Stu Webb, who was an FBI informant, who actually I took him in, housed him, clothed him for 7 months, gave him a car with gasoline in it, bought him a suit. He had no place to go. He was looking for a place to stay for 4 days. I took him in. He stayed for 7 months, and he ended up being an FBI informant against me. And he stole from me. He stole all kinds of material and research from me. And then he goes out now and he goes on the Internet, this guy Stu Webb, and he tells the people that I'm a practicing Satanist, that I was kicked out of the FBI for practicing satanic ceremonies in the federal building. And that's the kind of junk.
Well, I don't even really know that guy, but I mean, the issue is they call my wife up on unlisted numbers and tell her what her and I have been talking about on the phone. And then women call up saying I've gotten them pregnant. So it's just standard stuff going on. But you're saying today it's much worse. What do you see them doing with the Tea Party? Because every news channel is saying we're all racist, Klan members, and we're going to blow federal buildings up. The news is all saying I'm calling for violence when I'm calling for the opposite. Break that down.
Well, what they're doing is they've infiltrated every group in America. They've got their own people in there, their own informants, their own provocateurs in there, and they're going to stir them up. They're going to come up with the idea. Their provocateurs are going to come up with the idea of doing some violent acts, and then try to set up the Tea Party itself for these violent acts. And then, of course, that's when the FBI will come in and arrest everybody, and they'll let their people go. The people that set it up, they'll be pretend like they're prosecuting, they'll just disappear out the back door, and that'll be it.
Well, that's like Hatari up in Michigan. They're now saying that their FBI agent and informant were part of the 9-member group, but they still arrested all of them, but some of them are being held at other facilities, so we'll see them be released out the back door later.
Absolutely. They'll release their own people, and then they'll go along another part of the country and work in with another group under another name and start all over again. Absolutely. That's exactly what's happening.
Well, they've even caught the Democrats telling people to go out and dress like Nazis and go to tea parties. But more and more of this is coming out. I mean, do you think the New World Order's in trouble?
Well, I hope that they're in trouble, because people are waking up. And when I started talking about this like 30 years ago, I got out of the FBI in 1979. When I started talking about this 30 years ago and I came out and went public with this, people thought I was a kook, I was nuts, I was a conspiracy theorist. But now people are saying, looking back, you were right. And people are saying that to me on almost a daily basis. So I think people are waking up to what's going on, thanks to shows like yours, Alex, by the way.
Yeah, but well, thank you, sir. But I go back over your research. I mean, you broke major cases that came out in the newspaper, but then the investigation would get shut down, where the Finders case with the CIA openly running child porn, everything else. I mean, you guys were busting them with the kids. I mean, you really have been tireless out there, and now we know that literally it's like a satanic pedophile guild at the top. Well, let's talk about that when we come back, and how these people operate and what their New World Order is, what they want to build with Ted Gunderson. He ran the Southern California, L.A. Division, one of the biggest posts of the FBI in the country, a special agent in charge, and he exposed the whole thing. We'll be right back with Ted Gunderson from his hospital bed. Ted Gunderson, senior FBI agent, retired, fighting the New World Order for decades, is our guest. And he just had his bladder removed, and he's defeated cancer, so his doctor may come in any time, and he'll have to get off and call us back. But Ted Gunderson, short segment right now, long segment coming up. From your FBI training, from your research, a lot of your predictions you made over the decades unfortunately came true. How do you see the feds and the globalists from their pre-programming on the news, because they always pre-program, and I know you've been watching it because we talked before we went on air, what type of attacks should we look out for to demonize the Patriot movement?
Well, first of all, they're going to make all kinds of wild allegations, like we mentioned Stu Webb, being an FBI informant. He said I was practicing satanic ceremonies in a federal building, which was the reason I was dismissed from the FBI, which was not true. They're going to use all kinds of disinformation like that against each one of us. Like, I think they've accused you of being involved in pot or something else, Alex, and a lot of crazy stuff. And so they use those tactics, and then they are going to use their own infiltrators into the various groups. There was a FBI supervisor at Albuquerque, made a statement publicly that the FBI had infiltrated every patriot movement in the country. Well, they have. They got their informants out there. I know, because back in the late 60s, when I was active in the against the Black Panthers, we were in, and also the Communist Party. We had members and people that were informants for us within every group in America, so they can go in there and disrupt the operation, make plans for terrorist acts of some sort, and then blame it on the infiltrators and so forth. So it goes on and on and on. It's a vicious circle. And, like, for example, you mentioned the children that were being... I worked with Johnny Camp on this case in Nebraska back in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, where they were flying children out of Omaha, Nebraska. They were driving into Sioux City, Iowa, 184 miles away, putting them in private jets, flying them to Washington, D.C. for sex orgies with congressmen and senators. Well, then Rusty Nelson, the official photographer, who I interviewed, by the way, and I have him on tape, would take pictures, and then they blackmail the congressmen and senators, tell them how to vote. And that's what's happening in America today. And we don't have enough people like Kucinich and Ron Paul standing up. And these other people have all been, many of them have been blackmailed through children and through sex and through drugs and what have you. And, of course, they're only interested in being reelected for the most part.
So from your research, what percentage, how does the power structure work? Is it a mixture of pedophiles, Satanists, occultists? because, I mean, every time, I was never expecting to find this. Every time I do research, we run into Satanism, pedophilia, devil worship, occultism. I mean, it's really just a bunch of lunatics.
Oh, absolutely, but they're well organized, and they're fascist. We are dealing with a bunch of Nazi, fascist, evil people, and they are lunatics, but they're well organized. They know what they're doing. They have a master plan. It's called the Illuminati, and we're in a spiritual war. It's a spiritual war all the way, and so people need to wake up to what's actually going on. By the way, Alex, I have 52. Since I retired, I've written 52 reports. I don't write books; I write reports. 6,500 pages of my reports are available to the public. It's just on a CD. And you mentioned Oklahoma City earlier. Well, I've got my whole...
Yeah, I want to get into that. I want to tell folks they can go to tedgunderson.net, tedgunderson.net, and get that CD with all your invaluable reports. This is important information. Gunderson is spelled Gunderson, tedgunderson.net. Let's start getting into that report.
Well, that report, Alex, I've written reports on 911. I've written reports on Oklahoma City, which we'll go into more in detail, I guess, later on in the show. I've written reports on the car bombing of the World Trade Center in '93, and so on and so forth, and also on CIA child kidnapping operation by the Finders. I have this report on the Finders, a dynamite report. It documents that the CIA is involved in kidnapping children, selling them for up to $50,000 each. At auctions around the country, and I've given this report to the FBI a half a dozen times, and they completely ignore me. And instead of going out and investigating this and other matters that I've brought to their attention, they're investigating me and tried to set me up on, as I said earlier on your show, on a drug operation with this girl named Pam Fawcett, and they tried to set me up. They tried to set me up for criminal violations. It hadn't worked so far, and I'm not going to work because I'm not going to violate the law. But this is their tactic, and they want to get, they want to discredit me. And as a matter of fact, I visit Mike Reconnastudo, an inmate at Terminal Line on a regular basis. Mike was the person who developed the barometric bomb used in Oklahoma City. He was a CIA scientist for some 20 years.
Well, stay there. Let's get into it. Ted, we've got a break. Ted Gunderson joining us from his hospital bed. He's just had his bladder removed from cancer. And tough guy there in the hospital bed, firing away with the info weapons. We'll be right back with Ted Gunderson, FBI retired. I'm Alex Jones, Infowars.com. Coming up in 30 minutes, we're premiering it at PrisonPlanet.tv. Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA. The FEMA camps are real. We have the video. We have the government documents. We have the mainstream news articles. We have the congressional testimony. We have the executive orders. We have the riot police and troops being used against citizens, the military checkpoints, the Hardin, Montana situation, the underwear bombing proven to be a false flag, interviews with eyewitnesses. It's all in Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA. The DVDs are shipping out. Order them at Infowars.com with the expanded extras, and that supports us. Or you can also become a PrisonPlanet.tv member. It's 15 cents a day, $5.95. Takes about a minute to sign up. You can share your passcode with up to 6 people. PrisonPlanet.tv, premiering in 30 minutes at PrisonPlanet.tv. An Invisible Empire. This great new film also came out last week, and it is available. The whole New World Order system, how they operate, their crimes, government drug dealing, white slavery, the whole New World Order system. And the truth is what sets us free. The public is ready to be awakened right now. Get both the films at Infowars.com and go to TedGunderson.net and support him and get that CD with thousands and thousands of pages of documentation, reports he's filed to the public. Ted, let's run through Oklahoma City, and not just COINTELPRO, with Clinton and others saying there's going to be another attack, and even Michael Savage is now coming out saying Obama, he believes, is going to stage a terror attack. Limbaugh has almost gone that far, saying that they're going to try to blame it on us. So the public, this isn't 1993 or 95. The public is getting wise to false flag terror. So let's talk about Oklahoma City, understand the past, the present, and the future, and then let's look at what type of big terror attacks. Obama says the number one threat is nukes going off, and what you know about suitcase nukes. Ted Gunderson.
Well, when Oklahoma City occurred, I had a call from Mike Reconnastudo. I mentioned Mike's name a few moments ago. Mike told me that the Oklahoma City bombing It was not a fertilizer bomb. It was his bomb that he developed when he was with the CIA for 20 years, and it's called the electrohydrodynamic gaseous fuel device. Now, anybody with any sense knows anything about the fertilizer bombs. You don't even have to know anything about it, but you know that a fertilizer bomb did not destroy half of that building, which is what they claimed in Oklahoma City. So Mike called and told me this, and so I started researching it, and I found out and learned I'll call it a barometric bomb. This bomb was actually developed back in the 1980s under the Ronnie Reagan administration, and the night that it was tested in Area 51, I was with a group of people in Palm Springs waiting for the results. It was so powerful, they underestimated the strength. It was so powerful that one of the scientists died, and the two others were injured. And then it was highly classified. It is highly classified, still is to this day. And Reagan put a high classification on it, top secret, not to be developed or furnished to anybody, any other sources, and so on and so forth. And this was actually the bomb that was used in Oklahoma City. Now, my research didn't stop there. I found out the contract number for this bomb. It was developed by Hercules Manufacturing, which was Mike Reconocito's company. He actually developed the bomb. And it was manufactured by Dyna Nobel out of Salt Lake City. I wrote to Picatinny Arsenal in New Jersey, and with the contract number, and said, I want a copy of the contract. This is public source information, by the way. And they came back and said, there's no such contract in our record. And so that was an outright lie, because I actually had the contract number itself. And so there's right there. Now, in June of 1995, right after the bombing, Bill Clinton gave a speech in Hanover, New Hampshire, and he said that the bomb used in Oklahoma City was a miracle of technology. Now, the government, in the meantime, is telling us that the fertilizer bomb was used in Oklahoma City, and now Clinton comes out and says it was a miracle of technology. This is all well documented in the American Free Press, by the way. So you have a major cover-up. I made 2 trips to Oklahoma City out of my pocket and checked into this case. And there's absolutely no question about it. It was a government operation. In the meantime, Terry Nichols, one of the co-defendants in the case, has filed an affidavit with the U.S. District Court in Salt Lake City that Larry Potts, number 2 man in the FBI at the time, was the person who orchestrated the Oklahoma City bombing.
And that McVeigh was working for Black Ops, and we had Jane Graham on yesterday, who was on the 9th floor, and she said she saw McVeigh going up and down the elevators. She saw guys with gray sticks of butter and wiring, and we know police officers said they saw the same thing, like Terrence Yeagy. Then he basically got killed. All of this going on. And you have the building blown out, not in, and you've got, at the same time, Clinton saying it's going to happen again, and not even a veiled threat saying it's going to be blamed on the Tea Parties.
Right. That's right. It's all more part of the master plan. In order to to declare martial law, we know that they've got guillotines scattered around, at least 30,000 guillotines in I think they're in Atlanta right now. We have coffins that are stockpiled in Georgia. It just so happens in 1995, the state legislature in Georgia passed a law. They would allow inmates who were given the death sentence to be executed by guillotine.
That's right. More than a decade ago, you said they were stockpiling plastic coffins everywhere, and now they're on the news, and they admit they're stockpiling them everywhere.
That's right. That's right. And they Georgia 1995 passed this law which allowed them to bring guillotines and also coffins into Georgia as an excuse. Now that they prepped in anticipation of doing this on a national basis, I believe, and absolutely, there's no question about it. And so it goes on and on and on. And by the way, I might mention this also in the Fireman's Magazine, September 1995. The editor wrote an article about Oklahoma City, and the information he obtained for the article came from the Oklahoma City Fire Department. And in that article, it says that 4 different conventional bombs were removed from that building, from Oklahoma City, from the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. 4 conventional bombs were removed. So I think that what happened is that the barometric bomb went off, and it was to be followed by 4 other bombs that would have completely destroyed that building, but they did, for some reason or other, the other 4 bombs did not go off, that they had to remove them. And they stopped the rescue process for like 5 hours while they ran in there and brought a bunch of files out of Oklahoma City. Then, of course, we know about Terrence Yeagy. They said that he committed suicide. Well, I mean, that's pretty tough to do because he had 13, by the way, injuries to him, including to his arms and I think on his neck. And of course, he was shot, and there was blood in his car, and his body was like, I think a mile off the highway or something along there. So a good distance off the highway. So, that's all part of the cover-up. Yeagy I talked to his wife at one time, and he had a video. He was a video buff, and he had a video camera right there at the time of the Oklahoma City bombing, and he came over and started taking pictures with his video, and they wanted that. The New World Order boys wanted those pictures from his camera in order to quash the next. Well,
that's right. We've interviewed Colonel Craig Roberts, who was a police officer also in the area, who talked to his partner. And the last time Terrence Yeagy, Cop of the Year for saving all those people in the building, was heard from, he was going to his secret storage facility outside the police department out in the country where he had these materials. And he said, I'm being followed by feds. And then they found his body. He'd been tortured to death trying to find out where that video was. And we had all those other video cameras from the local bank and the YMCA that the government declared national security on and wouldn't release from the Oklahoma City bombing. As close as you can tell from your research, and it did come out in mainstream newspapers that the FBI head of counterterrorism was there for the week before, was there the day of the bombing. He'd lied about that. He'd said that he'd flown up from Dallas that day, that morning, but it turns out he is lying. But then you've got the Southern Poverty Law Center in declassified documents running Elohim City. You've got McVeigh there. You've got Andre Strassmeyer there. You've got all these people. From your research, as best you can tell, how was the operation run?
How was it run, you say?
Yes, sir.
Well, when you say how was it run, I mean, there was an inside investigator told me, an investigator for the defense, by the way, told me there were at least 11 other people involved in it. So it took a team of people in order to pull this off. You can't just run a truck in with a fertilizer bomb and explode it. And
well, that's what Jane Graham said. She said there were Army guys and McVeigh crawling all over the building.
That's right. That's right. So it was, well planned and well run. They were real professionals. So these guys know what they're doing. And but the only trouble is that the 4 conventional bombs didn't explode, so they didn't bring the whole building down, which jinxed their overall plan to bring the building down. But anyway, at least we have the documentation in that magazine article. But I've got this report. This is a 222-page Oklahoma City report. It's in my CD. It's in among 52 other reports. And this report is available, Alex, for $35. All my reports, 6,500 pages of reports, including 911, Oklahoma City, and what have you, and the Nebraska case, and Finders, the child kidnapping by the CIA. Excuse me. And these are available to the public. If you folks want to send $35 to me, you want me to give my address, Alex, or what? Absolutely. And the address is at tedgunderson.net, correct? Yeah, that's the, but send $35 and I'll send you this CD, and then I want you to make copies of this CD and get it out to your friends, because this is all documentation we're talking about here on the radio show. Absolutely, and you deserve the support as well. Give out the address. Yeah, okay, just send $35 to Ted Gunderson, Gunderson, 6230, A like Apple, Wilshire, Wilshire Boulevard, Unit 6, Los Angeles, 90048. That's Ted Gunderson, 6230A, Wilshire, Wilshire Boulevard, number 6, LA, California, 90048. Send me $35, I'll get this CD out to you right away. And then I want you to make copies and get copies to your friends. This is the best documentation that I can come up with. It's all my reports, 222 pages of just on Oklahoma City alone. I also have 911 in there, the FBI was alerted to 911, I might mention, on March the 20th, 2001, 6 months prior to 911. They were a fellow in the FBI named Keith Kutry was given information about advanced terrorist acts by the Al-Qaeda group, and he was ignored. Michael was ignored. This is again.
Well, Ted, you talked about this day one when 9/11 happened 8 years ago, and then it came out that all these FBI agents, Kathleen Rowley in Minneapolis, and FBI agents in Phoenix, and FBI agents all over the country knew specifically what was happening, and they were told to shut up, and they were demoted, and then those that told them to shut up were given record cash bonuses. That was in the Washington Post.
Right, absolutely.
Let me ask you this. How is the FBI broken up? Because we know the average FBI agents, is doing kidnappings and bank robberies. What divisions of the FBI are involved in the really dirty deeds, and how do they liaison in to the private contractors, into the CIA, and to other groups?
Well, the Domestic Intelligence Division, which would be Division 5, is the one that would be handling this. And they also handle, by the way, the Kennedy assassination and some of these other sensitive investigations. And they have liaison with key people and with the politicians, and their activity, the agents assigned to domestic intelligence, are coordinating this with CIA, Army intelligence, primarily Army intelligence, and they have a nationwide operation that's designed. It's really a terrorist operation designed against the average citizen, to expose us and to come after us and to raise hell and raise havoc with us and with our activities and discredit us.
And the average FBI agent doesn't really know anything about this, do they?
No, absolutely not. No, they do not. As a matter of fact, Alex, I mentioned Reconnaissance. You folks need to Google Reconnaissance, the name Reconnaissance. I'm going to spell his name for you. RICONOSCIUTO. Michael J. Riconosciuto, RICONOSCIUTO. You Google Michael Riconosciuto, you're going to find a tremendous amount of information about Michael. Now, Michael was set up, and he dared to testify against the U.S. Department of Justice in a criminal case, and on a congressional hearing, the Brooks Committee back in the late 80s, and he was set up on a drug operation and sentenced to 30 years. Michael's in prison now for this alleged drug allegation. But anyway, Michael his mistake was he testified against the government. And so they go in after him, they set him up and what have you. Now, I visit Michael on a regular basis because Michael and I have done a lot of work together. As a matter of fact, we met Osama bin Laden back in the spring of 1986, and we were responsible, Michael and I, for the surface-to-air missiles.
On Egypt.
All right, folks, I'm going to take us out to break. Something knocked out everything in here as soon as he talked about Osama bin Laden. We're going to get him back on. Folks, we've never had this happen, and maybe it's just Murphy's Law or something else, but right when he started talking about meeting with Osama bin Laden and a State Department official back in '86, there was just all the power went crazy. Only in the studio, everything went dead. I don't know how that happens, and was just going crazy, turning on and off, and I've never seen anything like this, and so very, very bizarre. Ted, you got cut off there. Everything got wiped out, and this is the end of the show. We'll have to have you back about this. Specifically, meeting with Osama bin Laden, what was that in relationship to? You said getting surface-to-air missiles to the Mujahideen. Go ahead.
Well, I had back in the spring of '86, I had a fellow named Bill Sloan come to me. He was the former top administrative official with the Reagan administration. And Bill said, "Can you help the Afghan rebels in their fight against the Soviets?" And I contacted Mike Reconnaissance, who I knew had been in the CIA for some 20 years, a scientist. And Mike and I met in a hotel room in Sherman Oaks, California, with this State Department official, and a tall, skinny fellow was traveling under a Turkish passport, and his name was Jim Osman. That was the name he was using. I found out years later it was actually Osama bin Laden. And as a result of that meeting, Michael furnished the Afghan rebels the surface-to-air missiles that we shot down, that they used to shoot down the Soviet helicopters and won the war for them. So, at that time, of course, Osama bin Laden was our ally. And then I subsequently learned that we furnished the rebels, Afghan rebels, the $650 million gear for 5 years. So they used that money, of course, now to come back after us.
So you're saying you were involved in the conduit with the government, and I've never known you to make stuff up, Ted. That's just wild. Now, how did you know he was Osama bin Laden, or did you find out later?
I found out later. I didn't know it until I found out years later. It was Osama bin Laden. He was traveling on the Turkish passport, Tim Osman. Did not know at all.
Well, that's now been declassified that it was Tim Osman, and yeah, he had a shaven face and everything else. I mean, did he speak good English, or what was he like? Yeah,
he didn't speak much, but he literally, you could understand him. I didn't think much about it. I didn't realize it was Osama bin Laden, and he was undercover. And I talked to the State Department official years, later on, and tried to get him to make certain admissions. He said, "Just forget about me. Leave me out of the picture. I don't want to have anything to do with it." He was afraid, which I'm not. But anyway, that's the story on, and that's Steve Michael developed these sources inside the Arab world by furnishing these surface-to-air missiles that defeated the Soviets. And so we had inside sources on this. We had inside information. Michael did about 911.
Well, Ted Gunderson, I'm glad that you've beat cancer, and we'll talk to you again soon. An amazing interview. He's the former special agent in charge of Memphis, Dallas, and the Los Angeles Division, and he won Law Enforcement Officer of the Year from the AFL-CIO, and so much of what he said in hindsight has turned out to be true. Very, very scary stuff. Ted, God bless you. Thanks for spending time with us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me on your show.
You bet. Take care. Folks, the broadcast is over, and very strange. He starts talking about Osama bin Laden, and everything goes dead here before he went to the last break. That was strange. But we'll just hope that it was just Murphy's Law, just a coincidence. Sure it is. No big deal. I'm going to try to figure out what happened now that the show's about to end. I'll be back live tomorrow, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central, right here on the one, the only GCN Radio Network. The websites are Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. And it's live now at PrisonPlanet.tv. Not just Invisible Empire that we premiered last week, but now Police State 4, The Rise of FEMA is live for PrisonPlanet.tv members. If you're not a member, go there. 15 cents a day, $5.95 a month. Your purchase supports this radio broadcast. You sign up in about a minute and be watching the film right now. It is live in 4 different high-quality formats, or you can order the DVD in the highest quality at Infowars.com. Great job, crew. See you back live tomorrow, God willing.